DJ Waters. This is Kim Hunt-Harris. She is the president of Caprock Writers Illustrators. We get so excited, we just jump right in. I'm president-elect, and we launched February 20th, 2020, and some of you were here for that, but, you know, the world fell apart after that. So we pretty much are trying to revive and get those people back, and, you know, we're new. We had a really good year. I mean, we really did a lot of wonderful programs. Like Kim said, if you're curious, go look on the website. So we're trying to pull together all the various writing groups and have a place for all of us to connect with other writers, get advice, get some help, that kind of thing. So we're glad you're here. Tell your friends. I hope you continue to join us. We are the second Saturday here now live. But if you miss it, we're also on our YouTube channel. So please go check those out. The item I want to talk about is our next month's meeting, July 10th, right here. I'm going to be talking with Stacy McKenzie from the Lubbock Library, Mahon Library, and we're hosting, Caprock and the Mahon Library and Literacy of Lubbock are hosting a book festival in September, so September 24th and 25th. At the Mahon Library. And if you all remember, there was a book festival several years ago that was a big deal. Barbara Brannon, Kay Ellington had put it together, and it was a beautifully done event. This is going to be smaller. That was a little overwhelming to take over. They moved to Spur, and we're like, I don't know how to do that. So we're doing a smaller version, but our focus is local authors. We want you all to be able to have a table to meet all the folks that are coming in. So our July meeting will be giving a lot more information about it, but you can sign up right now, and I highly recommend you do. You can go to literacylubbock.org, and they have a tab called Lubbock Book Festival. There is a place you can sign up to get a booth. It's $40. You'll have it. It's from 9 to 5 Saturday, and I think it's 1 to 5 on Sunday. Sunday is the children's book focus. And they're combining it with their Friends of the Library event. That's Friday and Saturday. So there's going to be a lot of traffic from that big event. We'll have the Saturday traffic. We're also having panels. All day Saturday are more the adult type books, and Sunday is the children's books. So we'll go into more detail. We're still kind of firming up all of our panels. But Jody Thomas will be there. She has her own panel, and we'll be talking about something super duper exciting. Linda Brode will be on one of our panels, the women's literature. And so we're developing it right now. So if you think you might make a great panelist, I'm in charge of that. Feel free to grab my card and talk to me later, or at the email address or the website I showed you, you can sign up to be a panelist and tell us what you think you would want to do. Doesn't mean that will be your panel, but you know, we're open to ideas. We're still in development stages. But next month, we'll be here and give you a lot more information. You'll be able to answer any questions that you have, to give you a little bit more of the layout and the specific panels and who's on them. So as an author, it will be really good if you have books to sell. But as an author as well, it'll be interesting to go to the panels and learn from other more experienced authors in some cases. Sometimes maybe you're more experienced. But I think it'll be a really interesting day. And if you know some of the folks that we featured here, we had Jody as one of our speakers. We also had S.J. Dahlstrom, who is a local children's author. He's bringing his horse. Ain't fancy. So Sunday, if you like horses, he'll be there with his horse. But he's also doing a little workshop for kids on how to write a book. So he teaches at Hutch Middle School and does a writing class where the kids in the class have to write an entire novel the year of that class. So he knows what he's doing. He's a good guy. So if you all have questions, if anyone wants to ask me questions today, I can tell you what I know about it, but put that date on your calendar, at least attend as a regular person, but if you want to be an author selling your books there, plan to get your books printed and ready and have all that stuff ready for that event. And like, we only have 40 slots, so we're hoping that we have more than 40 people apply. We are giving Caprock Writers members a special seating arrangement. If you are a member, you've paid your dues, and you come to sign up for the Lubbock Book Festival, we're going to take all those people first and choose tables from that slot first, and then So you're going to get an advantage, maybe have a better advantage to get into that event, and maybe even get a better place than your table is, because I don't know what I'm picking. So the group is, but like I'll know who you guys are. So if I don't know you, come tell me who you are, so that if I hear your name, I'll be like, another person. Okay, so a few questions about that. Come to the July meeting. We'll have a whole lot more details and a lot more exciting stuff. And go to that website. It gives you, they're doing a Friday night prologue party. All the authors are being invited to that.
And what is the website again?
It is literacylubbock.org. So go ahead on there, and then they have a tab, Lubbock Book Festival. They also have a Facebook group. It's an event. You can look on, just search Facebook for Literacy Lubbock or Lubbock Book Festival. So you can go sign up, and they've got all the information. But the prologue party is for the authors that are part of it. We're also having our keynote speakers there. We'll have a big silent auction, and it's going to be at the Buddy Holly Center. So it's going to be a really cool event. And we're hoping it builds so that we do this every year. It's bigger and bigger. So get in at the beginning, be part of that. Is there anything else that we need to do for announcements? Okay. So Mathis is going to introduce our speaker today, Tom Nichols. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. This is Mathis Rogers. He is our do-it-all guy, membership, newsletter, all kinds of stuff.
Thank you. Tom Nichols here has been a police officer most of his life. And he was the police chief here in Lubbock for several years. He was also the police chief in Arizona. And he's now writing his stories that are espionage and about the cartel. And he's here to speak to us about his writing and how you can use his information that he has in your writing. If you need espionage or something, he can help you out with that.
Yes, we are on. First thing we have to do is we have to darken the lights, because I did make a PowerPoint presentation, and I learned how to do this at one of the meetings with this group. So we'll see how well it works. This room is actually famous for acoustics. So if you can't hear at some point, please raise your hand or throw a stone or something. But anyway, the topic for today is food for thought for mystery and espionage writing. I will throw in kind of a release on that, is that actually it's food for thought for writers, whether you are YA, romance, westerns, doesn't make any difference. Some food for thoughts for writing. And so let's start out, and if you would, please put on your creative thinking caps, whatever it looks like, put it on now. And also need to let you know, and I learned this in college, there's going to be a pop quiz at the end of this. It's going to be a one-question essay. So you have to sit up and pay attention. But anyway, whatever we're going to talk about, so think about creative writing. You as a creative writer or creative illustrator, because we need both of those in our business. So I want you to picture yourself. So you have to get up and leave Lubbock. I want you to go to Paris. Midnight. You're on the left bank. You're sitting in a semi-seedy little bar. You're by yourself. You have your little snort of whiskey. And there's a table next to you with several people at it. And because you're by yourself, you're kind of listening because they look like pretty famous people. And you're glancing over there and you see Gertrude Stein, Alice B. Toklas, Faulkner, Hemingway. So you really picked a great table to sit at, so you can kind of lean over and listen to their conversation. And Hemingway's a big fellow, and he's really full of it, and that's the truth. He really did have an ego, and he was bragging about short stories and his ability to write. And it's a little argumentative there. They're sipping and smoking whatever they happen to be smoking at the time. And you can tell they're kind of reaching the point of argumentative. And what he is saying is that he can write a short story in 30 minutes. They're that easy to write. So, because a short story will have all the same elements of anything, 200,000 page word manuscript or anything. You have a good beginning that entices people to go into it. The middle, which is carrying out the storyline, the characters, and then an ending that leaves people, oh, I want more. And he's bragging, and they're getting a little fed up with him, but it's all in good humor. And all of a sudden, you're aware that they're betting. And Hemingway turns around and he says to you, come here. And they've each bet him $10. And he's covered their bets. He says, you're going to hold the money for us. You're pretty proud. This is cool. And so you're standing there, and he gets up, you sit down. You sit in Hemingway's chair, so you are really rocking away the midnight in Paris. And so he goes to your table, and he sits down with a piece of paper and a pencil. And the bet is he can or cannot write a complete short story in less than 30 minutes. I don't know about y'all, but I would never get that done. I'd still be on the cover page. But you're sitting there, and they're all very friendly with you and laughing because they're going to drink the rest of the night on Hemingway's money. They're sitting there, and they've even bought you a drink. And this is nice. And all of a sudden, he's, get on my chair. He's back. Stand up, and they're all laughing, and they're starting to take the money out of your hand. He said, wait a minute. I was like, they're 5 minutes, not done. So I won the bet. And he reaches in his pocket, and he pulls out this piece of paper. And they're laughing. Short stories? Yes, a short story. A beginning, a middle, and an end. Same components of every piece of literature. So, Gertrude decides, well, read us your short story. And so he says, for sale, baby shoes, never worn. The end. And all the components of a story doesn't make any difference how long it is. So nevertheless, he won the bet, and you get to drink with all those famous people the rest of the night. And so it's fun, and then pop, your dream is over and you're back in love. So one of the questions that comes up is that in fact a true story? And I have researched the Dickens out of it. It is probably not true, but it is based on truth. And that's where I'm coming on this little presentation for it. It's probably based on truth. It happened, I don't remember, it was in Seattle, one of those places, but it was a newspaper article back in the early 1900s, maybe around 1915 or so, that a young couple with their first child, and she's pregnant, and she lost it. They'd taken all their money to buy things for the new baby. And she had to advertise it for sale because they needed the money. And there was a news article in the Seattle paper back about that time. So something like that did happen. Very unlikely that Hemingway ever told that story, but he may have, but it's been carried on for years and years and years. But I wanted to pass that along to you. And another thing Hemingway said, and one of his things, and this is one of the things I have on my desk at my home office, writers lie. Because we're novelists, writers lie. So anyway, now I need to kind of refer to a couple of notes and see if I can see anything here in the light or the lack of light. So a book, I'm not here to really promote anybody else's. Thank you, that's right. So anyway, this is a book that my wife read, and I've started it. Not a kind of book I would normally read. It's called This Is How It Always Is by Laurel Frankel. Anybody heard of it? It's a new book, and certainly not something I would read. It's this woman's story, her story about her child who has sexual identity problems. The big thing you see in all the news and school board meetings and all. I mean, in the 2 minutes, no way in heck I'm ever going to read that book. But it turns out this lady knows how to write a book. But the part I like best about it is that the writer's notes at the end, because you're reading this is her true story. Then when you come to the end, one of her phrases in the notes is, this is a true novel. Well, there's no such thing as a true novel. It's an oxymoron. It's a novel where it's true, but as she says, it's a true novel, and then she goes on to explain it. As I'm reading her notes, I'm going, that's how I write. So here's food for thought for your writing of whatever type of writing that you do. If I can see anything we're doing here. Thank you for the light. So, one of the things that, of course, I've worked on all my life was in crime scenes, criminology, and criminal justice, and so forth. And one of the things I learned in writing, and referring back to my work, is that when I have an idea of a storyline, I go back to some of my work experience, do a lot of research, do a lot of traveling. But what I try to find is a nugget. This is what I call them nuggets. Here's something here, ooh, that is good. Here's another one here, no. I find all these nuggets that are true. Then I bring them together like a set of blocks on my table. And then I need to pull those together with creative writing. So obviously I change names, places, dates of birth, and things like that for liability's sake. But basically what I write, what she writes, is a true novel. Just a fact-based novel. And that's what I do. And one of the things I've learned, I first learned this as a young cop. There's a terminology that we use of the fruit of the poisoned tree. In police work, you're gathering evidence and so forth. If you ever gather evidence that is improperly or illegally obtained, anything from that point on is considered fruit of the poisonous tree and is inadmissible. That holds true in writing. And very, very recently, I was working with a friend on another manuscript, and he's out of my genre and everything. But I found a technical error in his writing. Basically, he said, well, elephants could fly, maybe. I said, well, yeah, maybe, but once you've reached that point of his writing that is completely wrong, that leaves great doubt or illogical in the remainder of the story. You cannot build a house on quicksand. I'll give an example here. Bloodstain, there on the left. And we can just look at it and say, oh, blood. And if you're writing mystery, espionage, you may have a crime scene. And what I'm trying to focus on is just be accurate. It's not just blood. If you look at it, well, there are blood spatters and blood splatters. And they are the difference. A blood spatter is like just a drop of blood, a tiny drop of blood, where blood just fell. A blood splatter is like the axe that chopped off the head. Blood went flying. When you look further into this, you see right in the middle, there is a pattern, a material pattern. It would look like a clothing pattern right there in the middle if you look very closely. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't want you to try to become a cop and a forensic scientist to write your novel. But if you just know some of the tidbits of truth, DNA, 1 in 2 billion chances of likelihood of 2 people having the same DNA. But there's a whole story to be told. There's a whole educational process of study in the forensic science field of just blood, doing nothing but blood. That's all. And my son is a director of a very large crime lab. They have people, that's all they do is read blood all day, every day. I don't know how they do it, but they do. But things to think about for your crime scene. Plus, in the blood, and I use this in my books, you can certainly use it in yours, is CODIS, C-O-D-I-S, the computerized data information system on blood. I forget what all the CODIS stands for, C-O-D-I-S, National Computerized System. So if this is blood from a crime scene, the forensic people have to classify it, do the DNA on it, submit the DNA to the CODIS file, which is in Washington, but every state also has their own DNA file. And at some point, try to match the two of them. Now here's a very short, true story. I was a young lieutenant in 1976, and I had a murder scene. And I got there, with along with 2 patrol officers. The mother had come to where her daughter lived, and the side door was open. She went in, she found her daughter face down, partially in the kitchen, partially in the hallway, completely dressed but shoeless. And she had been beaten to death, clearly with at least a brick and possibly other items. So this is 1976. We did our murder investigation, and during the course of the investigation, there's probably going to be about 40 people involved in that investigation. Well, one thing you learn very early, we don't call it callousness, we call it professional armor. That night when I left the crime scene, I turned it off. I was done. Whatever happened, happened. All we knew was she was probably a victim of domestic violence. She had a boyfriend. Nobody knew his name. Nobody knew where he was. We had nothing to go on. I went home. 2.5 years ago, 42 years from the time of this murder, I was sitting at my desk at home, and the phone rang. I answered it, and this voice says, "Is this Lieutenant Nichols?" I said, "Well, I was. This is Chief Nichols. What can I do for you?" And he laughed. He said, "Well, Chief, I want you to know I'm glad I found you, and I'm really glad you're alive." I am too. What's this all about? His prosecuting attorney from Pima County in Tucson said, "Did you ever investigate a murder on Mossman Street?" Boom, the lights all came back on just like this at that house. I started talking to him, says, "Just stop. I'm emailing you a subpoena, an expense report, and we need you out here, XYZ, give me the dates." So I went out to Tucson. This is 42 years later. All these people involved in this investigation are dead, except I was the patrol lieutenant on scene and 1 detective. We're the only 2 still alive out of that group. But because we handled the crime scene correctly, documented everything, we got a first-degree murder conviction based on CODIS, C-O-D-I-S. We didn't even know how to spell DNA in 1976. But a young female cold case detective at Tucson PD, a couple years before I got that phone call, just picked a cold case, went to work on it, ran the DNA, filed it in CODIS. And one day this man in San Diego went to file for his Social Security check, first time. Bingo! He came up. He was arrested. Tucson, convicted at this moment. If he's still alive, he's in the Arizona State Prison in Florence. But because we managed a good crime scene, so what I'm hoping is when you write your book, and I've seen this so many times, where people come in, walk around and see things, and look at stuff. Crime scene has to be as sanitary as an operating room. Obviously it's not. But it really needs to be a controlled thing. We also look for fingerprints. 3 types of fingerprints: a loop, a whirl, and an arch. It has a delta. Some will have 2 deltas, and a few will have no deltas. But a fingerprint expert will look at these, and like in our case in 1976, we collected blood and we collected fingerprints. And they eventually matched up with that fellow. And depending on what state you're in, there is no scientific standard. I'm going to say the minimum is 9 and the maximum required is 21 points of reference of identical reading of your known fingerprint that you have versus a suspect fingerprint from your crime scene. Anywhere from 9 to 21 depending on your state. I mean, just look at the fingerprint. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of markers inside that print that you would compare to what you find. Of course, you're going to have your crime scene, you're going to have your suspect. Now look at this guy, I think, no, I wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley, but he's so big I wouldn't want to meet him in the church parking lot either. But in your book, you have to learn to describe them, but don't over-describe. You have to create the image, you have to show it, but not tell it. Don't spell it out, one little bit at a time. So where do we start? We all want to write or illustrate, either one. One can't live without the other. We need each other. What motivates us? Why do we write? What's our genre? I would give just a pinch of my background of writing is coming through the department as a young guy. They sent me to college, really enjoyed it. And I did a lot of work and eventually did a lot of research and did a lot of technical research in different facets of police work. So I learned to write and then eventually retired. And then I took up the type of writing that I do now. I write for the joy of writing and the pleasure of telling a story. People say, well, that's one and the same. No, it's not. The joy of writing, I love going back through history, my own work experience, do a lot of research. You know, in the old days, we had to go to the library. Those of you who are old enough to remember walking through the stacks and collecting all your books and going to a carrel and sitting down. Well, now we just Google. So research is a lot easier. And then, of course, we travel and we read a lot. But it's important to know your genre. So many people write or want to write, and they're not clear on the genre. Again, you can just Google and learn. Go to Google and say, what is the genre? What are the genres? Get the long list. Find one that is most appropriate, do a little detail on it, or find out where you are and where you're going. But in your writing, are there rules? You notice that ends up with a question mark. Rules, guidelines, suggestions, question mark. I look at our own writing group at Right. Max McNabb, some of you who know Max. Max writes really great stories, but he doesn't follow the rules. He's got his own rules. But if you're good enough, you can do that. At the far extent of that is Cormac McCarthy. No Country for Old Men, some of those stories. Cormac does not follow any rules. And so I was with another reading group just last week, and I was trying to tell them about, I was suggesting a Cormac McCarthy book. And they're all college professors, no offense meant to them, but they looked at it, we can't read this. The first paragraph, we can't even get through it. Because Cormac McCarthy really doesn't like periods and commas, he doesn't like capital letters. He certainly does not like quotation marks. It takes a few pages of reading Cormac to get into it. Once you get into it, you can't get out of it because it is so good. So if you're highly skilled, throw all the rules out and write like him. He's a multi-millionaire. The likelihood that any of us would get there following those kind of abandonment of rules is about nil. But there are guidelines that you always really need to consider. AP, Associated Press, has very stringent guidelines. Now, in my genre, I probably don't have to worry about that, but other people do. Most recently, I got a notice from whomever that if you're following AP guidelines, you can no longer use the word surge or immigrant. Well, this is not a political message for certain, but I know what they're saying. They would no longer, this is about 3 weeks ago, they would no longer consider any works with those two words in it, surge or immigrant. Okay. In the middle of the Grammarly, so my computer, I keep Grammarly and spell check, and there are certainly many other programs to check your writing. Now here's the only difficulty I have with that, having Grammarly and spell check on there. They don't agree on anything. And so you just have to kind of go through and figure, well, which rule do I like the best? Or which one am I just going to tell them to do it myself, kind of follow Cormac McCarthy. I do try to stay with the Chicago Manual of Style. That is really the Bible of writing. There is a rule for everything, absolutely everything, in the Chicago Manual of Style. It has to do with your punctuation, your quotation marks, adjectives, gerunds, it goes on and on and on and on. What I have found, because I use it so much, it's kind of like a law book. You find a rule in there that you really don't like, doesn't fit what you want to do, keep looking, there will be another rule that likes what you want to do. So there are exceptions to the rule, and that is certainly true. But it's all going to depend on, eventually, if you hope to publish with your editor and the publisher, whether they like it or not. Now, speaking specifically the genre in which I write, There are challenges to everything, whether you're YA or anything. Everybody knows how it should be. Well, I started my police career in '61. Not a long time ago, very long time ago. But everybody watches TV, well, they've read fiction books, they've seen movies. Here's how it should be. And you try and write it how it really is, then you get rejected. Because common knowledge is not knowledge at all. It's common accepted myth. And you try to impose a fact on that. Sometimes the fact is not acceptable. I'll give one example of that. When I first started writing, anybody remember Wanda Evans? Wanda used to work for the AJ years ago. Before you. It's long before you. Because I'm 81 and Wanda's older than I. So. But my very first book, The Color of the Prism, and I met Wanda, and I took it to her to edit it. A lovely lady, she knows how to talk to you without crushing you and ruining your reputation. And I says, Tom, that's a lovely book. I hope you enjoyed it because you'll never sell it. What do you mean, Wanda? I said, you wrote a police report. That doesn't hold anybody's interest. About 2 pages into it, I was bored with what you wrote. You did not build in creative writing. You were just fact. And that was a hard lesson to learn. And so she took me to school for about 9 months or a year on how to write. I could not write like she would write at the AJ. I certainly could not write like Cormac McCarthy and abandon all rules, but she taught me how to take these nuggets of hard facts that I found, change them, trim them a little bit, add a little fat to them, weave them together, and have a story. So, but sometimes you have real competition of dealing with that which is commonly believed, which is totally erroneous. Now, one of the first cop programs, Dragnet, anybody remember? Somebody besides myself old enough to remember Dragnet?
Just the facts.
Bum, 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 bum. They did the end of the back. Bum, 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 bum. Sergeant Joe Friday, and everything started out with an aerial view. This is Los Angeles, California. I was working the day watch out of homicide. My name's Friday. I'm a cop. They all start like that. 30-minute program, and I always remember him saying, facts, ma'am, just the facts. All I want are the facts. When you try to write a book with just facts, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to be creative. And certainly TV and movies have become very creative. Chicago PD, one I never particularly cared for. Hill Street Blues, I really did like. I found Hill Street Blues stayed very close to factual, although they built in a lot of stuff that would not fly at all. But I also recall, anybody remember Hill Street Blues?
Yeah.
A few? Yes, thank you. Thank you. So Hill Street Blues always started out in the briefing room like this. The sergeant, I don't remember his name, stand there and they go through this raucous briefing. And at the end of the briefing, he'd say, be careful out there. I go all the way back to Tucson 60-some years ago, and I remember we had an old lieutenant, and that's how he would always finish briefing. Be careful out there. So I don't know who started first, but I believe we were seeing it before Hill Street Blues was, but they had good background music. But I also remember a couple of quips that would come from that old lieutenant. I don't know if anybody here knows the Howell family, H-O-W-E-L-L, out of Levelland. So this goes back 60 years ago. Harvey Howell was my shift lieutenant. Wise old codger. We generally were not that polite, but we called him other things. But Harvey would have things like start with, be careful out there. Sometimes he had a little different vernacular. Times when we were going out on really challenging issues, he would say, boys, because you had to remember there were no women police at that time. Boys, I want you to remember this. It's better to be tried by 12 and carried by 6. Pretty good advice. But he'd also say, he kind of laughed. He'd had a stroke, his mouth was way up here. Sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you. That was Harvey. But real police work is so drastically different than what you see on TV, and it's very, very difficult to combat that common knowledge, which is false. So one of the things I do to try to help my writing is I read multiple genres. This book, Where the Crawdads Sing by Della Owens. Anybody read that? Couple? Yeah. Fabulous book. Wonderful book. Highly recommended. I read professional police journals, mysteries. Larry McMurtry had the privilege, of course he died just a few weeks ago, but a couple of years ago sitting down having a cup of coffee with him at one of his bookstores. Very enjoyable. And that's a great book. It's basically an autobiography of Larry McMurtry. But different genres. I like international intrigue, and David Langengrath's Ian Rankin write very, very complex plots with a lot of characters. And so they're good writers, and I try to learn from them. Some of it I learn, some of it I don't do well. Again, I read professional articles. Daniel Silva, I think, is a great writer. Also, I like him because he writes international intrigue, and so I found him very enjoyable. Joseph Wambaugh. Anybody ever read Joseph Wambaugh? A couple. There's some good readers in here. Joseph Wambaugh, the first book I ever read of his was The Onion Field, and that's what actually inspired me to go back and start looking at some of my own work history and writing. That's a true story. If you look, it's an old car there. No, what it looked like 53 or 54 Plymouth or something like that. Where two detectives from Los Angeles PD were kidnapped, taken up to the agricultural area around Bakersfield to an onion field and were murdered. And so Wambaugh was a detective at the time. And so when he retired, he dug up legally all the historical files, and that was one of his first books, a great, great seller. And after I read that, I probably read it several times, I decided I can do that too. The other one there, I don't know if you can see that well. Paso por aquí by Eugene Manlove Rhodes. Anybody read this? I mean, you're welcome to look at this later on. It's delicate, so please handle carefully, because I could never replace it. Paso por aquí is just not really my genre, but it's a Western set in New Mexico. Paso por aquí, he who passes by. He who passes by. Back in the 50s, early 60s, that was the movie Four Faces West. But if you're looking for an old-time Western, I've read it several times. But these things that I do as research help me write, to learn to write, to read other good writers, to take hints from some of their writing. My wife and I have been blessed that we've been able to travel quite a bit. The picture on the left is a little old house. The prices are really off if you want to go to Russia in the wintertime. It was cold, but we did because the price was right. And we arranged one day to meet with some tiny little town, I don't recall where it was, to have like a snack with an old lady. So we caught a ride and went to her house, and she, of course, she spoke no English. So she was old, she probably was 75, so far past that now, but she looked to be 110. Nice little old lady though, so she had us in, and we had muffins and coffee, and her adult daughters interpreted for us, and just a nice conversation. The purpose was not just to have coffee and muffins. The purpose was to talk with Russians. I like writing things in Russia about Russia. It's like, if I try to tell you what it's like to eat a peanut butter and sauerkraut sandwich, you probably get an idea it's not very good. If you really want to know what a peanut butter and sauerkraut sandwich tastes like, make one and eat it, or at least one bite. Well, that's how I feel about research trips. I can study all I want about wherever it is that this book is going to be set. There's nothing like going there and interacting with people. That little lady was really something. She was a wonderful little lady. She didn't smile. She didn't have any teeth. But one of the interesting things I thought was in response to one of our questions, she didn't like Putin. She made no bones about it. She liked the days of the old Soviet Union. She didn't like just Russia alone. So she was very clear about that, very outspoken. The center picture, two men. Okay, this house here, I never used any of that in any of my novels. The next one of these two men, the one closest to the camera, he is a philosophy professor in St. Petersburg. And that's our middleman, our guide. He's Russian, and it's interesting. He learned to speak English by kept renting English movies and watching American movies. He eventually learned to speak English. He was our guide and set us up to have an afternoon snack with the professor. The apartment house in which we went is identical to one then that I built into one of my novels. Professor was a very nice fellow. The apartment was about 400 square feet. He's 42 years old. That's the only place he's ever lived. He was born there. And his wife and baby still live there. The wife is very unhappy. She wants room. But on that building at one time was a very, very nice building. Now each floor has 5 families. There's still 1 bathroom and 1 kitchen. I wouldn't let my dog eat off anything in it. It was so scummy. But we got to see Russia. That's what we went for. We wanted to see Russia. Absolutely not all of Russia is like that. But we spent an afternoon with him, talking back and forth with our interpreter, touring the building, walking through the neighborhood, learning about Russia. The next one is a park in Moscow. I had no intention of using that at all, but that park is now in the book. My wife and I gotten off the bus, and it's about a half mile down to the riverfront where we're going to catch our boat. You can go sidewalk that followed the thoroughfare, but we decided to walk through the park because we had plenty of time. So we're strolling through the park. This is the dead of winter, and see how they take care of their park. They put down colored wood chips, keep it kind of pretty. We're walking through this park. First you realize we cannot hear the freeway. We can't hear any boat traffic. It was as quiet as a tomb. It's probably all mental preparation. It's so quiet. We're looking around at each other. Woo, creepy. Went through another little grove of aspen trees, and there was a children's playground. Very small, swing set, teeter-totter, and a swing. Teeter-totter was probably serviceable. The swing hanging by one chain, dangling, dirty, hypodermic needles, vodka bottles. That's in the book, and it is. There's just so much because whether you travel internationally or you just travel Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Dallas, Arkansas, places to go, things to do, setting for the movies. Moscow police, I'll tell you this, they're not very friendly. So anyway. Continued research in Celtic. The one where I'm leaning over, that worked out, that was a good trip. That was in Tiberias. Did a book signing in Tiberias. It's going a long ways for a book signing, but it sure is a nice business trip. The Beethoven Monument in Moscow in a book. The waterfront on the Ring of Kerry in Ireland. I remember we were traveling, went into a pub to have a pint, and walking around the waterfront and looked up on the hill, those little sod-roofed cottages, and the rock walls. Bingo. Take notes, take pictures, research for a book. That's in a book. The large picture at the bottom, it's on the Arbat, A-R-B-A-T, in Moscow. Now that street's been around a while, since 1400. So it's only about a mile long, more or less just a strip mall, but lots of things to see and do. And I don't recall just what all was I found there, but I remember saying to Gwen, this is writing material. Make notes and make pictures. We went to a cemetery, the Hero Cemetery in Moscow. We spent the better part of a day there, probably spent a week there, but ended up also being part of the book. Again, travel. Again, you don't have to travel around the world. We're fortunate to be able to travel. Not everybody can do that, understand it. Within your realm, there are stories out there, there are places out there, there are people out there. You have your creative juices going, let it go. In writing, different points of view you can do in your book. The detective is going to be looking at things one way. The crime scene, as people like what I was at that night, I was lieutenant on that murder, we're going to look at a crime scene entirely different. The forensic people are going to look at it entirely differently. Everybody has their perspective. Everybody has our own genre. We all are individuals. How I write is not how you write. How you write is not how I write. We have a lot in common. But remember that DNA, 1 in 2 billion, look at your fingerprint, no two of us are alike. We all have our own points of view, our own strengths, our own weaknesses. We can listen to other people, go to other workshops. I never take anything away from a workshop that I'm going to follow verbatim, but I try to have food for thought when I leave a workshop. I also try to have food for thought when I leave a presentation or a crime scene. Now, your personal experience is going to be a lot different than my personal experience. I was a young Marine. I was a young cop. I was young 60 years ago. Had a young family, worked undercover. Had some great undercover cops work for me. There's great stories there. The one that really had the most impact for me was down in the lower right, where I'm sitting there like this. I was a sergeant, head of the planning and research unit. And my job was to lead research. That's where I learned to do research. We didn't have computers. But I cannot say enough about research. Just to sit down and write based on your own intuition, your own feel, what sounds good, what feels good, and it may be good. There's a greater likelihood that you're going to run into that fruit of the poison tree. You'll write something technically wrong, and therefore everything after that is problematic. Here's a very recent example. The other night, I'm not a great TV watcher, and I turned on Netflix, and there was the Bourne Legacy, Bourne Identity, something like that. And Jason Bourne, a good guy, and he killed all these bad guys, is with this young, beautiful lady who's a PhD scientist doing whatever they do. And they were in her house. I'm assuming this was like in New England. So they had to destroy all the evidence because all these dead people were in here that he had just killed. So this is the cop's thinking. And one time when I was very young, I was an arson investigator. He went to the cellar and he got 3 1-gallon gas cans. I said to Gwen, no problem with that. You don't keep gas in the cellar by the furnace. But anyway, he did. And he went through the house and emptied all the gas cans throughout the house. And then they stood by the front door and he handed his Zippo lighter to her and said, it's your house. Do you want the honors? And the next thing you see, they're driving away and the house is burning in the background. From a point of view, fruit of the poison tree. Because the second she would have flicked that lighter, that house would have gone up like a flamethrower, like a napalm bomb, because of all the fumes. So, obviously, they got away with that. They've made their millions of dollars in their books and their movies and so forth. That certainly can't happen. Not everybody's going to be a nerd, just going to look for errors. But just keep in mind, there are errors in writing. But be careful about them. Don't let them get in your way. Or if there's things you really want to see, work with it and adjust it. And in your life, people you meet, things they know, things they do, tell you, people who have stories, house cleaning ladies, carpet cleaners. Oh my gosh. We really want to see somebody move all their furniture and start cleaning. You know, I didn't know that. You're a school teacher. Whatever you are, there are people, places, and things that you encounter. You can't remember them all. Don't try, but find those unique characters. Upper left, that's my boss with the hat on, Lieutenant Frank Zuna, organized crime. That's Joe Bonanno, one of the 5 Godfathers. And we were working him on his way to court right there. A drug catch. The police dog, that's a very unique picture. Those dogs are trained never to leave without certain orders. The officer was being attacked, the dog jumped out, and the dog made the arrest. Wonderful. In the lower right, people have been with, that's Henry Lee Lucas. I don't know how many people he murdered, more than 1 or 2, that's for certain. In the middle, that's down in the Big Bend country, where we research Big Bend all over the place, and using Big Bend in 2 books, the one that just came out and the one that's coming out. And on the right, different people I've worked with, executive protection for 3 presidents. So wherever you are, whatever you do, you work with unique people. Keep them in mind. This was 2 lessons, a workshop I went to in California. I don't know how much money I spent to travel all the way to California to go to a workshop. I got 2 lines of notes from it, but it turned out to be worthwhile. Write white and allow the reader's mind to roam. What we're being taught was don't over-detail your writing. And the program we were attending was for screenwriters and for novelists. Paint the picture, but don't give all the details. Paint the picture, but don't give all the details. Let the reader learn. Now these are the current books that I have out. In the upper left, we were young once. You look in the background, you see that house down there in the middle of the Big Bend. The one on the upper right, that was a picture I took of Vladivostok. Near Rosalala. So if we're going to write, we sit down with our knowledge, experience, and research in front of a fresh Word document. And we're going to write because, for my case, it's the joy of writing and the pleasure of telling a story. And the most important of all is our attitude. We really want to do it. So that's my next book. The Russian. If I'm working out right, that's going to be the cover of the book, but sometimes I don't have enough pixels and they can't use it. But anyway, that is food for thought. Might be more than you ever wanted to know, but the concepts are the same. Your research, who you know, who you've met, things you've done, things you've learned about. Certainly doing your research, but also some of your own experiences. Go back in your own life with things that you've done, places you've gone, things you've done. Whether you're writing children's novel, stories about the petting zoo, whatever, teaching the kids to swim. There are so many topics, if we think about it, that we can go into them, and they're fun to write. Questions, comments, lights? Yes, thank you. Questions? Comments? Yes?
So at the top of your presentation, you were talking about like the spitter splatters, butter, all of the sputting of the blood and stuff, and how when you first started, you turned in a police report. But then, you talked about don't get too hung up. So at what point at what point do you embrace the suspension of disbelief on the part of your reader? Because, whereas in your mind, you're like, yes, I want this to be factual, I want this to be right, but you don't want to bore, overload the reader, At what point is like, okay, they can throw the lighter in the building, it's not going to blow up, and I just have to get over that. Like, when do you hit that bridge?
There is a point you just have to say, I accept it, that's the way it's going to be. One of the tools that I use in nearly points me to dismal failure is I use the fog index. And periodically I'll just take one of my paragraphs, paste it over to fog index. Most of my writings come out between 12th and 16th grade of reading comprehension. The average reader is going to be grade 7 or lower. So when I write, that's what Wanda found out the first time she read one of my things. My story, hope you're happy with it because you're never going to sell it. You have to find a point that even though I don't write to be a stuck-up snob, that's just the way I write. After I do the fog index, I commiserate. If I say a few bad words to myself, then I have to go back and rewrite. Because I have to find a point that people can read it and comprehend it and not have it be over their head. And sometimes I have to give in and say, hey, I'm going to do what has to be done, even though I don't like it. There are other times I say, I'm going to stand my ground, and if they don't like it, they can lump it. So, but there is a very, very fine line. Show, don't tell. Whew, that's hard. Very, very hard. Thank you. Great question. Comments? Yes.
I was just going to thank you too for sharing the concepts about what's acceptable to people for their knowledge. I work in computer security, and it just kills me every time you see a TV show where they're like, okay, click, click, click. I broke into the network. There's a lot more to it than that, but if you go into all those details, nobody's going to want to read or watch it, right? So I think with the more technology-savvy crowd coming, I'm hoping people start to put a little more in, but it's not just click, click, click.
For sure, and I appreciate you saying that because The Arrows of Allah is basically a story of the Russian hacking of American intelligence files. Have we heard that in the news? Yes, we have. And so I really got into it. I thought I was going great. So I started doing my homework. I thought, nobody is going to understand this. I really had to dumb it down before people could understand it. So I was trying to do it technically correct. Nobody's going to. I just lost everybody. I lost myself, I think. But excellent points. Thank you. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it. We do have books if anyone is interested. So thank you.
Did you say when your next book is going to be out? When is your next book going to be out? Do you have a date?
The next book is called The Russian. It's the third part of the trilogy. It's actually a series. It starts with Color of the Prism, which was basically a drug story, but I spent 4 years undercover on the Arizona-Sonora border. Then the second book in that series was, just came out, yeah. Well, it came out a year ago. That is, We Were Young Once, and that is set on the New Mexico, Mexican border, closely related to Color of the Prism. Then the next book that comes out is The Russian. Most of the same characters in this book are in The Russian. Some of the characters in Color of the Prism are in this book. So you don't have to read them in order, but they do follow, at least in my simple mind, they follow a line of logic. But The Russian, I'd be hard-pressed to get it out this calendar year, but with any luck at all, we'll get it out this calendar year.
Thank you, yes, get busy. Thank you so much. And he has plenty of books here, so stop by after the meeting and get a book, and he will sign it for you, right?
Yes, yeah. The contest. Yes, we have a one-question essay question. I hope you paid attention. Because in the very beginning, we talked about a blood smear, or spatter, or splatter, whatever you want to call it. And I also described very, very generally, we walked in and found the dead body. Now, here is the question. And ideally, you could do this. We have paper if you don't have paper. I'd like you to write in no more than one paragraph, not a 5-page paragraph. One paragraph, for your book, you're going to write a mystery. How you would write that scene of a cop walking in, expecting to find a dead body, and finding the dead body just as he steps through the door. If you would write a paragraph, how you would write a paragraph describing that scene, and put your name and email and everything on the back, and then I'll take those home with me, and then next month we'll announce the winner, and the winner will get a free book. So that's the test. So we walked in. The girl's mother has walked in and found her daughter murdered. She ran out screaming, and they were called the police. And here came the cavalry. And 42 years later, you don't have to go into the 42 years later, but here's your paragraph. So that's your take-home test.
Get your thinking caps on. All right. We are going to draw some tickets for the door prizes, but first, before we do that, did you write a microfiction contest entry? And if you did you turn it in back there, or do you still have it with you? Does anybody still have theirs? Because we want to make sure that it's included. All right. And then did you get a ticket when you came in? Did everybody get a ticket? Anybody need a ticket still? All right, I'm going to draw these randomly. If I call your name or your number, you can go over to the table and choose a prize. Okay? Linda Brody, get a prize.
Oh my goodness.
Congratulations.
First dance here.
All right, our next one is Lance Stanford. Congratulations. And all of these prizes were generously donated by the Caprock Writers Board, who is just an amazing group of people, y'all. They really are. They're hardworking, smart people. All right, the next one is that Kathy Walker? Congratulations. There are some here, I told some people that you don't have to put your name on it. I'm just going to go by the number. So if you have not put your name on it, but you have, it ends in 014. Does anybody have 0? All right. All right. And Fallon, Emmett, you won. Woo-hoo. Congratulations. All right. I don't want to keep calling out if we run out of prizes, so. There were not any. We'll give them a minute to get set back down. While they're doing that, as Tom was doing his presentation, he reminded me of a Facebook group that I am a part of. It's called Cops and Writers, and it's so helpful. If you want to write books that involve crime solving or police work, and you don't want to write the kind of book that makes people like Tom gnash his teeth, then this is the best resource, because there are lots of cops on there who are writers, and lots of other, some of them aren't writers, but they, like to talk about police work, and everyone is invested in making sure you get the story right. As writers, we want to make sure we get it right, and they want to make sure that we get it right, and they're not putting out, information like Fallon was talking about. And so it's called Cops and Writers, and you can join it, and people post their questions about their work in progress, and everyone on there is so generous to share their thoughts on it and make sure that you're getting the facts straight. So, okay, let's do this first. Is that all right? Okay. So the microfiction contest, which was write a 10-word story inspired by this image, and the winner is Fallon Mehmet. I want to read you his entry. Jane's clone stared at her curiously. It was time. All right, Fallon, you have won this. That's kind of a little chilling line there. It was time. All right, we do have a few more prizes, so I'm going to draw a few more. 7 more. Okay. Donna Olmsted. Is that right? All right. Hold on. Congratulations. Okay, I have another one without a name. It ends 015. The next one is Janice. Is there Janice? Janice. Congratulations. Terry Greenberg. We might have enough door prizes for everybody to get. Joe Warren. And Tiffany White. And one more, Mike Greer. Oh, he's not here. You're grabbing that code? Okay. 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 Number 013. Well, thank y'all so much. Okay. Thank y'all so much for coming. Thank you, Tom, for that presentation. And come look at his books. They're fascinating. We want to see you back here next month to hear who is the one who's contest and also to hear more about the book festival. There will be some opportunities at the end of that meeting to share about your book if you want to do that, or your work in progress if you want to do that. Come back because we're going to be here. All right, thank you.
I just wanted to say one or two other things. Next month, like she just said, we're doing the library thing, but also you could come and share your elevator pitch to the people that are there, or read a sample from your book. So get that ready. We would love to hear it. 2 minutes. Keep it brief. We don't need to read your whole novel while we're sitting there. So, but it's a really good opportunity for all of us to kind of meet each other and learn about their books, and maybe bring a couple copies in case you talk somebody into wanting to buy it. And get involved. If you guys, I dare you to talk to everyone in this room before you leave. Get to meet these people. These are other writers. You can help each other. We're all trying to form a community. We've all been cooped up for 15 months. Let's learn about each other and get connections, similar writers, or people that you can just have coffee with, whatever. We're trying to grow our group, so bring a friend next time or tell your friends about it. We are on Facebook under Caprock Writers and Illustrators. Our website is caprockwriters.com. We've got lots of information on there. Like you said, we've got the connection to all of our YouTube. We've done a program every month since last March. And if you missed it, which I suspect you missed at least a few of those, they're all on YouTube. So go back and look. We have Jody Thomas. We have S.J. Dahlstrom with his illustrator. We've got a lot of really good programs that we've had. So go back and look at those. Some of them were live, some of them were Zoom. And one other thing, we've got a couple groups that are connected to this group. One of the groups that I run was called the Barnes & Noble Author Support Group. We've shifted it now because Barnes & Noble isn't having people in the place. We're calling it the Mayhan Author Support Group, and it's once a month. I lead it. It's more marketing and writing craft and how to motivate yourself and structure your time. And it's just a small group of folks that come, and it's going to be the third Wednesday of every month at Mahon Library at 7:30. It's more casual. It's a small group where we're asking questions. So sometimes I'll have a topic that I present to you. Other times I'll leave it open, and people always have questions. So it's a great way to learn from other writers and get some of your marketing questions and your publishing questions answered. So feel free to join us for that. And yeah, third Wednesday of every month. And I have a Facebook group and I have an email. So if you all want to grab one of my cards, I could add you to the email list so that you know when they're happening. You don't have to come. I mean, the way it works is people show up. It's kind of a different mixture each time. We have a few people come every time. So don't feel pressure like if you don't show up, we're all mad. We're not. It's more just for you all to come and get some questions answered. And I guess that's it. So thank you all for coming. It's been great to have you all here, and we'll see you in July.
Thank you.